Alright, what we're going to do in this chapter is we're going to look at some of the browser methods and properties. We've already used some of these when we've been working in our labs to this point, and the examples in the book, alert and prompt, are both methods of the browser window itself. And so we're going to just look at a couple of extra today just to show how they work. Before I get started though, I do want to talk to you about how the dot notation works. Generally speaking, window.prompt and window.alert are is the correct way to write that. However, when you're working with objects and methods of the browser, you're allowed to leave the window off because it's an understood thing. The document itself is a child of the window, so technically windows.document.write is the correct way to do the dot notation, but again, because it isn't understood, it is frequently and almost always left out. But I did just want to mention that. Putting it is not wrong, but there's no reason to waste a whole bunch of your time in the life typing the word window dot if you don't need to. Alright, so what we're going to do today is we're going to look at some a property and a method. We're going to look at the location method in the first example I do in this video, and we're going to forward somebody to a different URL. And then in the second example in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the .go method of the history property of the window. Alright, so you do have to forward somebody in your lab, so this one actually applies a little bit to your lab. It's a little bit simpler than what you need to do in the lab, but it is the bare bones of what you need. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a page, and on the page it's going to say something along the lines of, sorry, wrong page, you are probably looking for, and then I'm going to go ahead and do an ahref equals http://www.tarleton.edu. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow them to, I'm going to make this an H1 also. So what I'm going to allow them to do is I'm going to, they've gotten to this page, it's a 404 not found page. It's going to say sorry, wrong page. It's going to tell you you're probably looking for. It's going to display this text, and it's going to give them the opportunity to click on the text. But I'm also going to code in an automatic forward, so if they do not click on that, it'll automatically send them to the location I'm after. So I'm going to go up into my function, and I'm going to do this using the set timeout that we looked at previously in chapter 7. So I'm going to leave this message up for them for maybe 5 seconds for them to read, and then after 5 seconds it's automatically going to forward them on to the Tarleton website. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to set up a function called forward URL, and that is where we're going to use our browser property in this case. So there is a property of a browser called the location. It holds the current URL of the page that is being viewed. So if you change the href property of that object, then in effect what it does is it sends it on to the new URL. So it's a pretty straightforward thing. You can do location.href, which is the property of that location that we can change. We're going to set that equal to the address of the page that we want the browser to go to. Now remember, we're setting a property here. We haven't done this a bunch. We've worked with a lot of methods that have those parentheses like document.write parentheses, but this is setting a property, and if you remember from way back, properties are equal to something. So if we were to run this right now, actually nothing would happen because this isn't a function. The page would show up and it would just sit there saying sorry, wrong page. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add our timeout from last chapter, and we're going to tell it to change to execute our function after 5 seconds. So we're going to do set timeout. We're going to tell it that it needs to call the function forward URL, and we want it to do that after 5,000 seconds. So let's go ahead and save this as bomb.html. Let me go back over to my browser. I'm going to go ahead and open up my bomb.html. sorry, wrong page, you're looking for is TSU, I could click on that, or if I wait 5 seconds, it automatically forwards me onto that page. So that's one way you can work directly with browser methods and properties. Right here we're going to use the location. We're going to set the href property of that to a new URL, and it in effect forwards the person on to that page. Alright, so that's one example we're going to do. One other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to use the history object. We're going to use the go method of the history object, which is tied to the browser as well. Now, because we haven't used events yet, and we can't click on buttons to make things go how we want them to go, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write a simple page that when you come to it, it is going to send you back one page in your browser history. You can't continuously do it, because once it goes back to that page, then of course your code is no longer used. So what we're going to do is we're going to write a function for this one. We'll go ahead and use that same set timeout. We'll need to change our function there. But this is just to demonstrate another method and object attached to the browser. So we're going to change our function. We're going to name this one revisit. And what we're going to do is we're going to tell it to go into the history object that is tied to the browser. We're going to execute the go method, and we want to go -1. And what this means is we want to go one step back in the history. If we wanted to go forward, if we wanted backwards and forwards buttons, we can have that. Just if you want to go forward in the history from where you currently are, you would have a positive number there, and if you want to go back, you would have a negative. If you wanted to jump back more than one, you could put -3 in there, and it would go to the page you visited 3 pages ago. So we have to change our function name here in our timeout. Notice I didn't set up an ID. Technically I probably should have, but since this is a timeout, I'm not going to need to stop it at any point. So it's going to actually tell it to call the function named revisit after 5 seconds. So let's go ahead and save this. Let's go back to the browser. Let's reload it. Actually, let's go to a page. Let's go to Yahoo, I guess. So we all know that Yahoo is the last page we visited in our website. So now when we open it up and execute it, we wait 5 seconds, and it should take us back to the Yahoo website. Okay. Like I said, when you have buttons that you can click on, this becomes a little bit more usable, but this is just to show you that all of that history information that is stored as part of the browser is accessible through your JavaScript. So that's what I have right now for the browser element, and we will be moving on to the document element next.